Welcome back to the book club. Today I'm going to be talking about Ship of Magic. This is book one in the Liveship Traders trilogy by Robin Hobb. And this is the second trilogy in a set of trilogies, kind of asterisk, in the realm of the Elderlings. So the realm of the Elderlings is the overall series, and this is the fourth book in that. Part of the kicking off point of the next trilogy, though. So if you have read the Farseer trilogy, this might be the next natural step to go to, as it takes place, I think, time wise, shortly after the events of that book. Although, if you want to dive into Robin Hobb for the first time and you haven't read the Farseer trilogy, I think this is still a fine starting point for people that are interested in Robin Hobb. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about the plot, the prose, some of the world building, and just some of the things that I liked about this book. So, first off, just to get it out of the way, at the very beginning, I greatly enjoyed this book. I really loved the Farseer trilogy. I really loved this book as well. And I think that if you loved the Farseer trilogy and you could get past the, emotional damage that Robin Hobb has done to you in that trilogy, this series, at least so far, is maybe not quite as tragic, but still, like, it's the same. Like, Robin Hobb really loves to just rub your beloved character's faces in the mud, and make you kind of really, really work for it. Mr. Fluffy really wanted to come inside for this. So, a little bit about the plot of the series. If you enjoy really emotionally driven journeys that are about, in this case, seafaring merchants and pirates and a little bit of familial politics, I think this will be right up your alley. For those familiar with the Farseer trilogy, the plot, in my opinion at least, the way that I describe Robin Hobb to people is that the plot kind of is more about the character's emotional journey and like their internal journey, and less so about what's actually happening externally in the plot. And that's like up until the very ending of book three in the Farseer trilogy. So far, there's some exciting events that happen in this book in Ship of Magic, but really what happens is the character growth, in the sense that you grow to like them and then they kind of like nosedive, and all of their plot lines are kind of like, oh no, a bunch of sad things are happening to them. How are they going to get themselves out of this? Or how are they going to like recover or grow or adapt or whatever? Similar to how Fitz did in the first trilogy. So the plot isn't necessarily the most like action packed, full of battles and that kind of thing. There are pirates, so there is some of that in here too. But I think this is really for readers who are into, maybe, or want to take a little bit of a break from the kind of go 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 style of book, which I enjoy as well. Like, the Cradle Will White style of book, which is just all action, no breaks. This is like a lot of character work and characters talking to each other, introspection, thinking about what they want in their lives, and how they're going to move forward and embrace these really crappy situations that they find themselves in. Her prose style is so simple that I also don't like. I can't, as somebody who doesn't have a degree in English or have like studied literature at all, I can't even actually describe why her prose is better than somebody like Brandon Sanderson, who I also greatly enjoy. But she just has a way of like writing things that just have this strong emotional resonance, and you really feel what the characters are feeling. You will hate certain characters in this book. You will really be rooting for characters in this book that maybe aren't the best people overall, but you've seen them go through some stuff and you want them to come out on top still, despite it all. And the way that she's able to do that with language that is like pretty easily understandable, but just still like has this way of pulling you in, is really interesting to me. If anybody is maybe a little bit more well versed in literature or the English language, it can explain to me why her prose is so good but also so simple. I would love to talk about that, or if somebody's made a video on that, if you could point me in that direction, that would be great, because I really am interested in like how she writes so simply but yet still has this like distinct style that evokes something so much more than a lot of other authors do. And a little bit of the world building too. I think that's maybe the lightest part of this book. I try to think about, or the way that I evaluate books is I think about their plot, the characters, the prose itself, and then also like the world building, because I'm I'm a big Sanderson fan. I like the world building that he does. I like in-depth magic systems that are like have a lot of hard magic and rules. But I also like this type of book where it's a very soft magic system. You don't really know why any of the magic works the way it does, and we never will know why, or I expect that we won't. And there's a lot of magical things in this book that kind of build out the world. Um, but the reason I say that the world building is the lightest in this book is that I think in the Farseer trilogy, you're stuck in or you're placed in I think it's the Six Duchies is what the area is called. And so you get to kind of learn about like what the different duchies are, like what they're like, and like sort of the politics in between them while you're still like focused on the character of Fitz and what he's up to. In this book, it's a little bit simpler where there's Bingtown and the Bingtown traders, and then there's a city far to the south which starts with a J, and I never really pronounced it in my brain, so I'm not going to try now. I forget what it's called already, and I literally just finished reading this book 30 minutes ago. But there's two main kind of cities that you know about. Bingtown is the main one that's actually focused on, that is built out quite a bit. And then there's a bunch of pirate islands in between, or like small little towns where they pop off into a tavern. So there's not like a lot of actual understanding the physicality of the world when people are traveling from point A to point B. I think there is actually a map at the start of this book, but it's not terribly, let's see if I can find it. Yeah, it's not like terribly detailed. So you can see here. It is pretty light on what the detail actually is, and they spend a lot of time kind of like in between all this stuff here where you don't really know like where they are and like literally where in the world they are. So that's kind of that one aspect of world building. But again, this is not a bad thing for me. I'm okay with not really knowing like where in space in the realm of the Elderlings I'm placed at any given time, and I kind of just let the author take me where she will, and it still works for me. But that is one aspect of this book that I think is good to know about in case that's something that's very important to you. But that's not to say that the world building isn't there, because it is still a world of weird mysteries. There's a lot of talk about the Rain Wilds and the Rain Wilds River, and a bunch of there's these Bingtown traders that are some of our main characters are part of the families of Bingtown. But then they also have these ancient deals with the Rain Wilds traders, who for some reason always grow like warty and die early and have all these weird problems, but they're also super rich because of all the treasures that come down the Rain Wilds, or come down from the Rain Wilds. So I know that there is a 4-book series later down the line, which is actually the Rain Wilds Chronicles. So I'm assuming that then is when you learn a lot more about actually what goes on in the Rain Wilds. I'm not sure if these books are going to cover it, but in this book itself, you just learn a lot of like little tidbits of information about these Rain Wilds people, like some rare jewels that they're able to acquire, and like some weird things that happen to them, and knowing that they grow old and warty and die early and that kind of thing. There's also maybe one of the most important parts about this book. This book is called Ship of Magic. I maybe undersold it for the last however many minutes we've been going here. But one of the most interesting parts about this book is that there are ships that are live ships. They are magical ships made of a special type of wood, aptly named wizard wood, that after a certain number of people in the family have died aboard the ship quickens and becomes alive and has its own personality, can speak. And it's unclear what these ships are, but it is also part of the mystery that I think is going to be told over the course of this trilogy. I think we're going to learn a little bit more about what the ships actually are and why they can be alive. But that is a new area of world building that it builds on, or I guess is separate from what we learn about in the first Farseer trilogy. Because I don't, I could be wrong here. It's been a while. I don't remember Wizardwood being a thing. Maybe it's mentioned offhand or something in the first trilogy. But this is kind of a new part of the world that we're learning about. And I will say also, if you have read the Farseer trilogy, there are a couple nods throughout this book that are pointing at things that have happened, I won't actually say what the character said because it would spoil the first trilogy, but one character actually mentions the event that happens at the very end of the third book, um, Assassins, whatever it's called, of the Farseer trilogy. So, a big event happens, super crazy, and there's a character that mentions it and tells it like as if it's a story, and other people don't even believe that it's real. So it's clear that this book happens maybe 10, 20 years after those events, a long enough time that people now weren't necessarily there for it, and they also don't even believe that it happened because it was so bizarre that it's just kind of like the rumor mill has spread those events further. And so I don't know if there's going to be more hints towards the stuff that happened in the Farseer trilogy later on in this book too, or if there's going to be any overlap at all. But I do think that's one of the reasons why, at least from this first book, it's okay to not have read the first trilogy. You can just kind of hop right in. If you're more into, pirates in the high seas than you are into, castle politics of the Farseer trilogy, or you've read a lot of stuff about Fitz being somewhat annoying at many times throughout the book, and you don't want to deal with that. Unfortunately, you're still probably going to read this book and be like, oh, there's other characters that I have to hate. So I'm not sure if that's really going to help you, but you could start with this book and then go back and read the Farseer trilogy, and then you'll, find out about those connections. I don't think this book explicitly spoils anything really, unless you're like an extremely apt reader, I think, that could somehow piece these puzzle pieces together. So I think all that being said, that's all my thoughts that I've had so far. 30 minutes to an hour after having finished Ship of Magic. I'm going to be reading book 2 and 3 in this trilogy very shortly. What I'm planning to read in between, though, I just got this in the mail, is what is this called? Letters from a Shipwreck in the Sun of Suns and Moons. Sorry. Letters from a Shipwreck in the Sea of Suns and Moons by Raymond St. Elmo. This is a self-published book that I've seen some on r/fantasy. There's been some mention of Raymond St. Elmo in the past. He's a self-published author that has very little but very highly rated ratings on Goodreads. His books all have 4.5 stars, but also only have under 100 ratings each. And this one, I kind of took a look through some of the books that he's written, and this one, the title at least stuck out to me. It sounds, based on the title alone, very interesting, but also the premise sounds a bit interesting. So I'm going to give this one a read next, maybe read a couple other small books in between, and then hop back into, I think the next book is called Mad Ship. Yep. Yeah, Mad Ship, and then Ship of Destiny we've got next from Robin Hobb. One thing about this book too, this book actually looks kind of small, but this is 800 and I guess almost exactly 800 pages of pretty small font. I actually didn't even read, if you notice this is uncreased. I didn't even read this version of the book. I actually bought it on my Kobo because it was too hard to read this at late at night with the small pages and the words next to the light in my room. So I bought the ebook just so that I could read it a little bit more easily. A book that's this size, it's a lot easier to hold open. But and the text is a little bit larger, but when the text is this small, I like having the physical books, but I also can't read it really that well. Maybe my eyes are starting to go already. But anyways, that's Ship of Magic. That's what I've got next on my list. I got a lot more books that are on my to be read list as well. I want to continue reading the Wars of Light and Shadow by Janie Wirtz. I'm 2 books into that, so I'm doing this little Robin Hobb divergence to read the Liveship Traders trilogy, and then I want to go back and read some more of the Wars of Light and Shadow. I'm just a little scared of getting sucked into it's an 11 book series, so I have 9 more books to go. Having just come off binge reading Wheel of Time, I wanted to try to read some of these shorter trilogies in between, and read some smaller books in between those as well before I get sucked into another big epic. But Wars of Light and Shadow is on the horizon. I also need to read all the other Malazan books. So I've read the Big 10, but I have not read any of the Malazan Empire books by Ian C. Esselmont. Nor have I read any of Erickson's newer books, like the Carcanis trilogy, or the 2 books out of the trilogy that are there, or the Karsa Orlong trilogy that I think the first book is out. I'm not sure if the second book is out yet, but I think the second and third books are like written now, and there's going to be 4. So I need to catch up on those as well. Dive back into the world of the Malazan Book of the Fallen. But that's what's up next with me. Let me know in the comments below what you thought about the Liveship Traders trilogy. If you've read it, keep it spoiler free, please, for myself and for others. Let me know what you think about Robin Hobb, if you enjoy her or not. If you know why her prose is so good but so simple, I'd love to hear an explanation too. And let me know of any other interesting books that you think would be worth reading. And with that, I will see you next time.